Hi and welcome to part 4 of how to modify an internally assessed standard resource in classical studies. This section will deal with the assessment schedule and the modifications that need to be made there. So if you've watched parts 2 and 3, you'll know that this is a 91204 sample assessment task that's being modified from architecture and the relationship between classical architecture and modern, to looking at ideas and values about law, democracy and justice from the classical world and the relationship between those in a modern context. So I've modified the teaching guides and I've modified the student instructions, and now it's up to modifying the schedule itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the title. So I've called it "What's Law Got to Do With It?" because that seems to be a bit of a hook somehow, and it's a nice reference to a great song. And then I'm going to go through and now have a look at the judgment statements. So the judgment statements describe the quantity and quality of work that's required. In classical studies with holistic assessment, we don't tend to rely on quantity, but we definitely look for quality. So the first thing that I've just done there is got rid of that architecture reference, where I've just inserted looking at the classical ideas and values about law, justice and society. Sorry, I made that up, and democracy. And just added in now the relationship between classical modern ideas and values about law, justice and or democracy, and that will do. So now I've done the same thing down here. I've looked at the relationship between, to give evidence of what I'm actually looking for with the typo corrected. So it's now about consistency, and for Achieve, students have to use primary source evidence. I'm doing those same changes in the merit column over here, and somehow my copying and pasting, I've managed to make a few typos, but I'll fix those as I go. And now I'm looking at the excellence column over here. There's no set way about how you have to lay it out in an assessment schedule, but this is the kind of traditional way, and it's not the only way, but it does clearly define those 3 levels of Achieve, Merit and Excellence. So just a bit of tidying up. I'll just go one step back. So I've made sure that the points from explanatory note 2 are there in the excellence criteria, the merit criteria and the achieved criteria, with reference to both what the understanding has to be like and the use of primary source evidence. Normally we'd then have reference to a snippet, an evidence statement, and usually it's quantity and quality that's demonstrated. So imagining this is the one about architecture, that's now no longer relevant. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to do the same for merit and for excellence. And I actually haven't written one for this just to exemplify what you do, but you want to show the context. So I'm suggesting for an achieved, it's just a snippet of understanding with some use of primary source evidence. For a merit, it's not just understanding that we're looking for, but in-depth understanding. And the primary source evidence has to be of specific relevance. And we see that as well for excellence, except that instead of it being in-depth, we'll just get rid of that. It's perceptive understanding. With judgment statements and evidence statements, of course, the expectation is that you would share this with your students, and if you provide far too much evidence statements, you could preclude the students from meeting the standard. I think it's quite good sometimes just to choose a point and then say and exemplify the same point at achieved, merit and excellence, and then say to the students that they can't use that point in their understanding. So my suggestion, in their work, my suggestion would be to make sure that you're choosing a point which is not the crux of the argument, but again, it allows the students to see the progression between the 3 levels. What you'd do now is you'd of course make sure that everything is fair and consistent. So at the beginning in the teacher guidelines, I've just jumped all the way up the page. I didn't give it a title, so I've added that in, and I'm just doing the same on the front cover. And because I've now modified this task so much, a lot of this stuff here on that very front cover isn't relevant, so I'm going to get rid of that. Oh, no, I'm telling a lie. I'm just going to add version 1, so it's all official. I'm going to get rid of that stuff about quality assured numbers, and I'm going to get rid of that as well. So now it is my task modified.